Hello everybody, I'm Midnight from Rebels Day Productions, and today we're doing some costume concept art. If you didn't know, Netflix's Daredevil is the best thing ever. Netflix's Daredevil is by far the best superhero property I've ever watched, and by far one of the best TV shows I've ever watched, and definitely Netflix's best show. One thing I had a problem with in the show, though, was the Daredevil costume. He only really wore it during Season 2 and The Defenders, but I had a problem with it. The MCU is very good at creating comic-accurate costumes that also look realistic in their interpretation on screen, though the Daredevil one never quite sat right with me. They desaturated the color of the Daredevil suit and added a lot of black, which made a lot of sense as Daredevil was more of a stealth character. His black suit was received really well, and they wanted to bring that over into the next bit. But Daredevil is also a really red character. Red is his color. If you watch The Defenders, you can see in it that they used Daredevil's red color in a variety of scenes with him. It was one of my favorite parts of The Defenders that they used color coordination in their shots to tell you whose story we're currently focusing on. But the Daredevil suit wasn't my favorite. The red of it looked really murky brown, and the blacks didn't really look right, and the padding of it was just so padded, which was weird for Daredevil. I get where the idea of the armor came from with the extra padding from Daredevil's fight in Season 1, but it just looked too padded, too fake. Daredevil it wasn't as fulfilling as the other suits. So today I thought I'd bring up my concept art skills and redesign his costume for the MCU. Since Netflix decided, hey, we want to clear house, and instead of making this incredible show that is clearly our best, we're going to make some of our own original content, which makes sense, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, Daredevil was one of their best shows, and I could talk about it at length for hours. In the making of this video, I'll probably end up cutting quite a few tangents that go on about how epic the show was. So, some of the key things we're going to be looking at is first the original costume that I didn't like so much. It had good ideas, but I wanted to change it to look more comic accurate, but also a good representation on screen. There's some other concept art I'm going to be looking at created by the show that showed a more comic accurate representation of the Daredevil costume. It looks good. Dare I say even great. Definitely a costume I'd like to see on screen. Looks just a little too cartoony though for the suit, so I'm going to try to do my best to do better. And we're also going to be looking at the armor Melvin Potter makes for Wilson Fisk / Daredevil during the seasons. So the first step to the design is obviously to rough in a rough human skeleton. Something for our base to go off of. I do this rather quickly and a little haphazardly, but I just need a rough shape to get in there. Then I go there and I refine it a little bit more. Next I add piping to my figure, which allows it to have some form without fully working in all the muscles and everything. After this, behind these layers, what I do is I rough in just the base color. I chose a nice mid-red for this, but as you can see, Photoshop didn't think that was the greatest of colors and chose a new one. I decided that was still a bit too dark and went a bit lighter, which I might change at the end of this. Next, after that was done, I created a clipping mask over this, and then added some shading to give my rough color some form. I chose 3 colors that I thought I would use mainly for this design. I chose my standard red, a black for heavier bits of armor, and a darker maroon red. I then start roughing in the design of the Daredevil costume, making sure to care for the things that Daredevil needs to use most, aka his other 4 senses. If you didn't know for some reason, Daredevil is blind, but his superpower is that his other senses are heightened to the point of superhuman levels. He has really excellent hearing, he can feel things so well that he can read print off of pages, he can taste things straight out of the air, like one scene where he tastes copper from blood from a wound someone just opened. And he can even smell things that no one else could. So using his other four senses is going to be the most important part of Daredevil's costume. So one thing we have to take care of is the ears aren't too heavily covered, his mouth and nose are open, and the gloves are able to be taken off relatively quickly in case he has to use his sense of touch to read something on a printed page or find the material of something. I then decided that the skeleton and piping I was working off of wasn't quite there yet, so I go in and I add more detail to it. Then after that, I add a layer above this, and I sketch in the key concepts of the costume in positions that make more sense with the current anatomy. I add more color to ease over any transitions from how big the previous skeleton was to this one, or how small some things might have gotten. And now that I'm at a position where I can really start working on the concept art, I'll be back when it's all done for you. And okay, so the Photoshop file at this point, when I tried to add textures, froze. I took a bunch of textures that I had for Photoshop and I tried to import them into the file and then resize them to put on the Daredevil costume so that it had a textured look to it. I then would have warped these so that they fit better with it, but since the Photoshop file froze and then crashed, and then once it got back, it didn't want to import any pictures, probably for obvious reasons. But besides textures, I'm all set with the Daredevil costume. So this is what I got. In the end, I decided that the initial red I used was just a bit too bright, so I went back and I darkened the entire piece. But I'm pretty happy with this, and I think that I think for my own personal skill level as someone who's never really designed costumes to go from comic to real life, I think it looks pretty accurate in a way that could be interpreted on screen in a realistic manner. Now, of course, official Marvel heads would probably create something much better because they've been working at their job for 15 years or so and have experience in this matter. But for someone who's never done it before, I think I did a pretty good job. So if you enjoyed this piece, make sure to leave a like on the video. If you want to see more of my stuff, which most likely isn't going to be Daredevil related, and if you want to see more of my stuff, which isn't always Daredevil related, sometimes superheroes, sometimes YouTubers, sometimes original content, make sure to subscribe. And thanks for watching. I'll see you later.